We're going to have a quick time of Q&A. Some of your questions that you submitted fall into this category, and so we're going to hit them. And so let's just jump right into that. Question number 1, does suffering well or healing well equal being void of emotions and not ever struggling? Like, does it, like doing it well mean you have to have this elevated mindset all the time that is like gazing above the suffering, like nailing it, right? Hopefully it's super clear by now after these last 2 teachings that the answer is no, right? No, not at all. Do you want to elaborate on that? I feel like I have already.
Yeah, I'll just say, in addition to that, no. No, I don't have anything else.
Okay.
Sorry.
Do you have anything on this, honey? I feel like you might have a different perspective.
I think that we can treat, especially those who, sorry.
It's okay. I know.
We can treat ourselves and those people or our spouse that we hurt like robots, thinking that, well, A plus B equals C. You should be, you shouldn't be affected, or you should be over this by now. But we are humans with hearts, and we are affected by difficult things or things in general, right? We are affected, and being affected is not wrong. It might be hard to handle, but hard isn't bad. Bad is bad. And so I think just remembering that we're humans with hearts, you're married to a human with a heart, which is a good thing, and being affected by something, I don't know if that answers the question. I feel like some of these are connected.
Yeah, let me just remind you too, also, the vast majority of the epistles, the letters in the New Testament, are written to help, believers endure hard things and suffer well. It's not because they're already doing it. If Corinth or Thessalonica or Philippi was crushing it, those letters wouldn't be necessary. So just remember, like, if you're not having that, quote, elevated mindset all the time, yeah, exactly. That's why the Bible is written, to help us. So you're in good company. Okay, number 2. One thing we struggle with is initiating the conversation when someone is feeling hurt or upset. We always get around to it and come out better on the other side, but sometimes the conversations don't happen as quickly as they should. Help.
This is a great question, and I will do my best to double mic this. I want to hit it from 2 different angles. I think one, just in general, like when we think of the concept of, feeling and processing that. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but just the reality of like being proactive and creating a culture where this is just a reality. Like a phrase that I've heard that's been kind of helpful for me to frame just this concept of feeling and processing hard things, difficult things, is to have a good theology of emotions. Or maybe that's a goofy phrase, but what does that mean? It's understanding that God actually made us as emotional beings, like all of us. Like, it doesn't even matter like how you process emotion. Like, just recognizing you are an emotional being. This is for men and women in the room. Now that's going to be expressed, it's going to come out differently, but this is a when, not an if. Like, when you are feeling something, like, how do we engage that conversation? And so in general, like, I think having the right expectations that this is what it is, and you want to deal with it initially. Think of like bleeding out. Maybe that's a little graphic, but like, most of us have been around small children, and they come and they have little nicks and bruises. Like, it may not be a huge deal, but if you saw blood dripping, off a finger, off a shin, you're not just going to leave it. You're going to want to step into that immediately, even if it's just a little bit. And so having rhythms in your relationship where this is regularly happening is going to help address, well, how do we step into this when someone's feeling something? Well, if this is something that's just common, that familiarity is going to fuel safety. And I think that's a big issue with talking about emotions. If I feel safe with the other person, if y'all feel safe with each other, it's going to take what might feel like an 8 and 9 in having that conversation, and maybe it's a 4 and a 5. It's proactively, regularly having this type of engagement that's going to remove some of the difficulties. And as you develop that, it's going to help eliminate some of what Tyler mentioned earlier, where now it doesn't feel like a courtroom. Like marriage shouldn't feel like a courtroom. You don't have to defend your case. Why? Because, well, I trust how they feel about me, and I'm going to trust how I feel about them. And now we can have some dialogue when I'm feeling something to get to the heart of it. And so specifically, well, then in that moment, what do? Similar to yesterday, we got to begin with the Lord, like be prayerful. Like I need to be aware of my own limitations, my own capacities. Maybe I am feeling angry, I'm feeling upset, I'm offended at, their response, their lack of response. Well, first have some inner awareness that, am I even in a place to address this? Take some time to be with the Lord, and then as you've developed that culture, being able to go to them and invite them into conversation. Hey, can we talk about this interaction we had, or whatever it may be? But to everything that Tyler just talked on, that's going to help lay some groundwork, and just be committed to each other's care. And I think as you begin to develop this and it's natural, it's going to become easier to share how you're feeling and to give the other person space to receive that. Something that we talk about a lot. I hate conflict. Arguing with Erica is probably the closest thing to hell, thank God, because of the cross, that I'll ever experience. The harmonizer, the people pleaser, that's there. But as we recognize that maybe that's a limitation in me, it's going to allow the Lord to mature me to go, hey, they're not a light switch either. Me sharing my feelings is going to create the opportunity for them to have feelings. But if we can do that in a safe environment, it's going to make it a lot easier to then engage those conversations. So then it's no longer a struggle. It's just, hey, this is marriage. This is a relationship. We're going to hurt each other. There's going to be feelings, and we can talk about it, and it's okay.
It's really normalize is a word that came to my mind, kind of what you're saying. If we can normalize it, have the lower end conversations more frequently, then even the deeper ones won't feel as intimidating.
Yeah. Well, to highlight something Tyler said earlier, as he was talking with how do you initiate that? Remember that words can be weaponized and wound somebody, or they can wash over somebody. And so how you initiate that conversation, whether it's an invitation or an accusation, is going to play a huge difference in how that conversation plays out. I think we've all experienced that.
All right, number 3. What if the hurt they feel doesn't feel legitimate to me? Disagreement about the sin or the pain caused is kind of there. Essentially, what they kind of frame this as, I don't think what I did was wrong, or I don't think you should feel that way or that strongly. Like, what do I do when I feel like you shouldn't be hurt or shouldn't be hurt that? How do we navigate that? Obviously, I hit some of that in the teaching, but I'd like, Lauren, maybe for you to expound on that, or any additional thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think like the progression of Ephesians 4 that Tyler pointed out, if we want unity, then we can take a step of humility and gentleness, patience in those moments. That's the literal practical steps of in those moments. When I think Tyler's upset about something that I'm like, this is ridiculous, right? That is not going to then produce unity if I am not humbly saying, okay, if he's upset with me about something and I've done something to hurt him, that is not me taking that first step of saying, maybe I have impacted him. I should care deeply that I have impacted this person who I've covenanted with. I can, in humility, apologize to him for my impact, even if that is absolutely not my intention. Even if I say, I'm so sorry that is what you feel. That's not in any way what my intention was, but I still want to apologize for this, and this, that you felt this. That's not what I want. That's not what I want for you to feel. What I want for you to feel is this, just like some of the things that you already said. And I think, something that I see as important to point out in any type of pain, hurt, conflict, anything, if we view them as not annoyances or that's irritating that there's even something happening, if you view it as an opportunity for the Lord to shine light on something that there isn't unity in, or that could be covered in the gospel more, that could make us move towards that difficult moment, instead of, oh, I don't like this, right? And so I am not so conflict averse. Like, I don't have, I don't know. I see it as, okay, there's something. It's like your kid is hurt and you're like, okay, you're fine, right? If it's something little. But instead of thinking of something little within your marriage, don't you want complete, full unity, healing, everything to be covered instead of you're fine, right? Right? So I don't know if that.
I was just going to add a quick thing to it. I think something to think about, going back to like being emotional, like chances are, like when you married your spouse, you didn't assume that you didn't think they were crazy and irrational, right? So when you're in those moments and you're confused by why they're feeling the way they're feeling, I think that's something to remember, because as an emotional being, like there's a reason they're experiencing it the way they are. And there's layers to it. And part of that care, part of that concern for one another is that there's something happening that's fueling and feeding why they're responding. And it may be beyond even you. There might be deeper things. And approaching that conversation in a kind way could again invite you in an opportunity to minister and be an instrument in the Lord's hands to heal and minister to something that might be deeper than just, what to you on the surface and what you don't know feels very confusing and might feel illegitimate, when maybe it's very legitimate. What they need is care.
And what if it is illegitimate? A question I rehearse in my brain, I've learned to over the last 3-4 years, because this is exposing of my motives, is I ask myself, would I rather be right or unified? Oftentimes, you don't get both. Right? What do I really want here? To be right and show you that's illegitimate, you shouldn't be hurt? Or do I want to be unified? Sometimes I'm right, but I need to defer and lay down that right for the sake of unity. That's what humility does sometimes. Again, doesn't mean I miss an opportunity to be a part of my wife's sanctification, and that time may come, but what do I care about more? Being seen as right or being unified? That's a hard check question. Okay. Can I ask number 4 and then maybe parent somehow? Okay, last one. How do you let the person who hurts you, your spouse, be a part of your healing? We did talk about this, a little bit in the talk already. How do you let them in when you feel angry or unsafe because you were treated in hurtful ways? And so your walls are up when they are trying to help. This will lead us into next session, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on it. But I would like for you to say anything you want to on this, or the last question.
Yeah, so I just want to, I feel like it's important to point out, when we have this, like, when we're kind of instigated to want to say, well, that's not valid. What you're feeling isn't valid. If you look at what that word means, and obviously you're not going to say that to your spouse, or else that's not going to go well. But if that's actually like what you're feeling and you're trying to communicate that, if you think about what you're saying is that your feelings aren't valuable. And then what that actually communicates is you are not valuable. And again, we're humans with hearts, and we are going to be affected by things. And that doesn't mean Tyler is such a jerk, I cannot believe he would hurt me. It means that he is a broken human, just like I am a broken human. I might be responding in a broken way to his brokenness, and it's okay. It's, again, an opportunity for the Lord to heal things and bring us into unity with that, and being covered with the gospel and that. To answer this question, I think, there are, this is maybe, I think it depends on the person and what the actual, what your response actually is. There are times that Tyler wants to be very kind and like, I'm like, do not touch, right? And so it literally depends on the moment. But I think that well, I can, if I can simplify it this way, if we both want the gospel in any moment of conflict, if the person who has sinned against the other person or who has hurt the other person wants the gospel for themselves, that means they accept that they're not going to be perfect and that they can accept the gracious gift of the Lord, that it's okay, and they can apologize for their impact and deeply desire for the gospel to change them, right? And if I am the one that's hurt, then I can deeply desire the gospel for myself in accepting that I am not married to a perfect human and deeply wanting the gospel for him, wanting the grace of the Lord for him, and also not being stuck in the pit and wallowing around in the mud for myself, right? Because if we have been hurt bad enough, sometimes we're in the pit and we're loving it. We're in the pit and it feels great because we're like, look at what you did to me. Do you feel bad about it? I'm in the pit. But instead, wanting, just like we've talked about, we wage war against the enemy by getting out of the pit, by begging the Lord for the gospel to cover whatever it is and not just wallowing in the pit. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it sure does. The only thing I would add as we end is, what's the alternative to letting them in? You want to go the other route? Walls up, like no healing, distance, separation, combative, like roommates. Like, no. What's the other alternative? Like, you're in a covenant with this person. So your options are let them be a part of your healing or not. Which one do you want, right? So if we can just simplify it, that can sometimes help. Okay, we're going to take a short break.